All right, we're just moments away from the polls closing in Tennessee, where voters are deciding on the next representative for that state's 7th congressional district. It's a race that has drawn national attention for what it might signal heading into next year's midterms. The district has been a Republican stronghold, but in the recent weeks, the race has actually tightened, with Democratic State Representative Afton Benn gaining momentum. And after Democrats also fared well in the November off-year elections, a win here could be a big confidence boost ahead of the midterms next year. A strong Republican win could show that President Trump's messaging continues to win voters over. So how will things shape up? Joining us now is NewsNation's Mills Hayes, who's live in Matt Van Epps' headquarters in Nashville. Mills, what's the mood there? Are they expecting a win tonight?
Hi, Elizabeth. Well, people are still starting to trickle into this watch party, but I did speak with some friends of Matt Van Epps who were in the Army with him, and they tell me that they feel good about it, and they think that he will be winning tonight. But they also say either way, they're going to be heading out to the bars over at Broadway in Nashville, hopefully to celebrate, they say. But the polls, as you mentioned, 10 minutes out from closing, and as far as early voting goes, we saw about 84,000 people show up, but that's significantly lower than the 300,000 plus that showed out to early vote in the general election. But still, at the polling location we were at earlier, it was a steady stream of voters coming out, and some voters telling us that they want a different direction in Washington, while others say they want to see more of the MAGA agenda play out.
Prices on the food is real high. This is my first concern. Not for me, for the other people. I mean, not everybody make the money the president make.
I truly believe that these tariffs that Trump is bringing in is going to help this country, because it's not going to cost us as much money for the products that once it levels out.
The country's just so uncertain right now on every issue. I don't feel safe. A lot of people don't feel protected.
Tennessee District 7 is usually a reliably red district, with President Trump winning it by more than 20 percentage points in the last election. But the race between Republican Matt Van Epps and Democratic candidate Afton Benn has been close, and both parties have poured millions of dollars into this race, trying to bring out big players to turn out the vote. President Trump has endorsed Van Epps, taking to Truth Social to encourage Tennesseans to come out and vote, and also calling in to a rally. And on the Democratic side, we've seen Kamala Harris as well as AOC show up for Ben and also try to get people out to vote. So it's going to be a close one, but the margin of victory is really the key thing here to watch tonight. Elizabeth?
Yeah, if the Democrats even get close in that really ruby red district, that's going to be a headline of its own. Amazing to get all this attention and millions of dollars on both sides being spent on this race. It's really big. Mills Hayes reporting live from Nashville. Thank you. And you can get all the very latest updates on this race on our News Nation app. Don't forget to get it. Coming up, tech billionaires Michael and Susan Dell just pledged more than $6 billion to American kids. It's the biggest private donation on record. So who exactly gets this money in this so-called Trump account? We'll break it down for you next. Billionaire Michael Dell and his wife Susan just announced that they are donating more than $6 billion to American children.
A $6.25 billion investment in America's kids through our charitable funds.
Next year, every American child will be able to get an investment account powered by Invest America.
If you want to be part of something truly meaningful for our kids, for our communities, for our country, join us.
That money will go to 25 million investment accounts for older children. This is separate from the existing Trump accounts already established for newborns. It works out to about $250 per child, and to qualify, the child will need to be 10 years old or younger and live in zip codes where the median income is $150,000 or less. The account will track the stock market and keep on growing until the funds become available on the owner's 18th birthday. President Trump celebrated the investment with the Dells at the Oval Office today.
It is indeed Giving Tuesday, one of the biggest days of the year for philanthropy and charitable giving. And this afternoon, Michael and Susan Dell are committing to one of the largest private donations in American history.
They'll feel like Michael Dell someday.
Parents and guardians need only to open a Trump account to automatically receive the grant. That's pretty generous of the Dell family to do that. That does it for us tonight. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Elizabeth Vargas. We'll see you right back here tomorrow night, same time. Right now, it's time for Cuomo.
Chris Cuomo here. Welcome to News Nation. This is where right and left come to try to be reasonable. So everybody's talking about Venezuela. Is there a real issue? Yes, there is a real issue that must be brought forward about what's happening in Venezuela and what is about to happen. But we're not really focused on that. Not really. The state of play is a gotcha. Who ordered the second strike when those two guys were still hanging on the side of this alleged drug boat? And whether Secretary of War Pete Hegseth is throwing a real military man, an admiral, under the bus. Now, that's what this is about, certainly for the left, is getting that scalp. Now, is there legitimacy in that cause? Yeah. The president stepped away from owning this early on, but it is still his administration. Here's the thing. Whether or not Hegseth ordered it matters, but it really is just a piece of the larger question that no one seems to care about, okay? What they care about is getting Hegseth out. They want the scalp and embarrassing the president. That's what it seems to be for most involved. Not for me. Why? There's something more important. And it includes that, but it matters more. It's just not as sexy. I want to shine the light back on Congress, because this is about Congress allowing presidents to take their power, specifically over military action. President Trump is doing what past presidents, both right and left, have done, and in my opinion, done often wrongly. Taking unilateral military action and counting on Congress to cower. We've seen it. We saw it with Obama. We saw it with Clinton. We saw it with Bush. We saw it with Reagan, okay? What is the authority to do anything around Venezuela? The administration says, oh, we have a Department of Justice memo. It says it's okay. Oh, but it's a secret. We won't release it. Here we go again with no transparency. It has to fit into a very narrow category for a president to work unilaterally in this way if we're not being actively invaded or attacked by a sovereign. Now, they'll say, well, we are. We're repelling an invasion. We're protecting the national interest because this drug thing is basically a war. Does that pass muster? We don't know. He's never made the case. Does the president have the power to attack boats because cartels are selling drugs? Is this really an extension of financing a campaign of violence inside the United States? Does that even make sense to you logically? Well, let's unpack it. What drugs? They keep saying fentanyl, fentanyl. Venezuela, to my understanding, unless you know something I don't, and certainly nothing's been offered, they don't make fentanyl. There's been no proof submitted. One report, says that 20% of boats that have been stopped from Venezuela looking for drugs didn't have any, let alone have fentanyl. Mexico makes fentanyl. Oh, no, not fentanyl. We meant coke. Okay, that's not Venezuela either. That's Colombia. And they come up through Mexico as much as they go through Venezuela. So who do you blame here? I blame Congress. They're the ones who let this situation fester. Have they not learned anything from Vietnam? Oh, wait, they did. That's why they passed the War Powers Act of 1973, so we don't get into another police action that kills tens of thousands of Americans or more over years and years. The War Powers Act is simple. If a president believes reasonably that they are getting attacked, you got a 60-day window to conduct military operations. And then you've got to stop and you got to make the case to Congress for further authorization. Trump has passed that window, even if he did have a righteous premise for this. And I don't believe he does. I believe Hegseth has to be held to account for why this happened, because he's the one saying we're just getting warmed up.
And we've only just begun striking narco boats and putting narco terrorists at the bottom of the ocean.
I want those boats taken out, and if we have to, we'll attack on land also, just like we attack on sea. And we're going to start doing those strikes on land, too. You know, the land is much easier. It's much easier. And we know the routes they take. We know everything about them. We know where they live. We know where the bad ones live. And we're going to start that very soon, too. We're taking those son of a bitches out.
Look, I get the muscularity of this for MAGA specifically, but where is the proof? I mean, you've got a lift on your hands to make Venezuela a focus of the war on drugs that warrants 10% of the Navy being moved into the area. Okay? Congress, this is on you. When the president says we will do, he's talking about you. You declare war. That's your job. Article 2 in the Constitution. It's right in front of your face. Why aren't you doing your job? Bravo, Senator Rand Paul on the right, Senator Tim Kaine, Senator Chris Murphy on the left. Good. You guys have been consistent about this. Different administrations, presidents abuse the power, they overstep, and it should be debated, and you've never been listened to. You guys are right, and you should be listened to now. But the Republicans who control Congress, specifically the Speaker, no interest in this. More concerned about the race in Tennessee that's happening today. So at a minimum, release the DOJ memo that says this is okay. Don't keep it secret like the Epstein files, the JFK files, the UAP files. Let us see the memo. Come on, where is it that says this is okay? Because it doesn't make any sense to me. 10% of the Navy stationed around a place that's not known for making the drugs or being any significant part of our drug problem in this country. And let's not forget what the main problem is in the country with drugs, right? Demand, right? The supply is always going to be there if there's a demand. But you want to attack supply? Fine. What do I think this is about? Now, if you've noticed, I've paid very little attention to the first strike, the second strike. To me, that's simple. That's a little bit about CYA. And also, it's about proof. Show me the drugs. Show me what the threat profile was. Show me why you did this. I'm not in any hurry to defend drug dealers, okay? And I don't get why the left is once again doing this to try to paint them to look like authoritarians. Congress should have jumped up a long time before now, and they didn't. They abdicate power to a president, and they've done it time and time again. I think Trump's plan here is a 50-50. 50% is a distraction to showcase strength and beat up on somebody that can't really do anything about it, and use it as a proxy for fighting for your interests, keeping you safe. I just don't think Venezuela is the threat, and they haven't made the case that I'm wrong. The other 50% is making a statement about what they want to demonize, which is socialism. That's why I believe they picked Venezuela. Why? Because Venezuela has the best known, least liked face of socialism in power, Maduro, okay? And if you want to demonize socialism, this is the poster boy to do it with. I think that's a big part of this, certainly bigger than fentanyl or that they're making drugs, because they don't, all right? Demand that the Secretary of War, who, you know, has been doing things that he's not played this well, okay? I can't say I'm surprised, but he should have to be held to account. Where is the proof? The vote on having Hegseth come and present to Congress the rationale for what has been done and what they are planning to do should be unanimous, just like the Epstein files, because frankly, this matters a hell of a lot more. So let's talk to better legal minds about what might be in this memo, right? And whether or not I'm right in the basic analysis that they should have to make the case, certainly at this point. Two constitutional lawyers, former Trump attorney Jesse Binnall, former White House ethics czar under Obama, Norm Eisen. Counsels, good to see you both. Thank you for being here, especially on short notice. Jesse, I start with you, and you will argue the affirmative. This is okay because...
Chris, if there are missiles headed to the United States, I don't think anybody would say that you have to go get an act of Congress in order for the president to take action to stop those missiles headed there. The drugs that are coming from places including Venezuela, that are killing hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Americans, is deadly, and it's coming in many cases from the organizations that have been designated by law as terrorist organizations and are unlawful combatants. And in that case, it's perfectly appropriate for the president to use deadly force like he's using here in order to keep Americans safe.
Okay, Norm?
Chris, great to be back with you. Very unfamiliar position for me to be starting from agreeing with your constitutional analysis, and nice to be here with Jesse. But Chris, you are right. The Constitution gives war powers in Article 1 to the Congress. We have never in American history seen a president who claims that there is authority in the Constitution to strike civilians. It is not written in the Constitution. It is not implied in the very limited authority that the president has, the commander-in-chief power. It's not part of his responsibility in the Constitution to conduct foreign relations. There's no precedent for what Donald Trump has done here in American history. Two final points. We are seeing Congress flex its authority more. There's discussion today of having a war powers resolution on the floor. If Donald Trump tries this misbegotten assertion of military authority against Venezuela, the predicate is not there. There's no indication that these gangs are connected to this purported drug campaign. Chris, U.S. intelligence, Donald Trump's own government says that's a bogus predicate. And finally, if Donald Trump is so concerned with drugs, why did he pardon drug kingpin Mr. Hernandez just the other day? This is made up. It won't stand constitutionally.
Okay, two things can be true at the same time. Bad look for President Trump to pardon the Honduran guy when he's saying he's so worried about drugs in Venezuela. Fine. However, Jesse, I don't have any problem with your case. The problem is they didn't make that case. And at a minimum, I don't blame Trump for trying this. I like Norm using the young people's word, flex. I'm okay with him doing it because every president tries to do it. I've always been against it. I even think that how they prosecuted the war on terror was a violation of the AUMF of 2001 and certainly 2002. But he is right to try because everybody does. But he should have to make the case, and they should have to release the memo. Fair points?
Well, here's what I would say, first of all. The president's use of the commander-in-chief authority in order to protect Americans goes all the way back to Washington. Washington used this power to protect Americans. So Washington on forward, presidents have used this authority. So yes, to declare war, you need Congress to do that, to protect Americans from imminent harm and danger. That's something that goes all the way back to the beginning of the Republic.
But you have to make the case. You have to make the case, Jesse. There are no missiles coming at us. I like your example. It's just much better than what we actually have.
Yeah, and Jesse, Washington never attacked foreign civilians abroad. There is no precedent.
Well, Norm, are you a civilian? Are you a civilian if you're a narco and part of a criminal organization that the president has ruled as an executive order, if not as law, is a terrorist organization? Do you still just get claimed as a civilian, or he's arguing otherwise?
Here's the danger with the argument that Donald Trump is making, and the reason, yes, of course, Jesse's right. If there are missiles, if there are foreign planes by foreign military pilots, given the extraordinary discretion the president has here, the slippery slope, the difficulty of review, if you allow him to unilaterally declare anyone a threat, and then to execute them, you're creating an international regime of murder. What happened in that boat, if media reports are true. We're still digging in. We need a congressional investigation. But what happened to that vote on September 2nd is either, it appears, a war crime or murder. And similarly, the hostilities that we're about to launch on Venezuela are completely unpredicated. So hopefully Congress will be more robust. We've never seen this. And come on, Jesse. George, you tell me one foreign civilian that George Washington summarily executed. Name one.
All right, wait, forget about Washington. Jesse, make a final point, but just give me your take on whether or not you believe that we should see the administration in the form probably of the Secretary of War, or whatever they're calling him now, to come before Congress and make the case.
So I think that this president and this administration has been the most transparent in recent history with why they do things. I think there is they've already shown a strong basis for the drugs that are coming in from Central America, including Venezuela. I think it's fine to continue to show things to the American, but at the same time, you have to do that while at the same time protecting classified information. And so I don't think this administration, the same as any other administration, is going to release classified information that its release could do grave harm to the United States. And if you want to talk about overclassification, that's one thing. But I think that there is very good.
It's the only memo. It's the only memo of its kind that hasn't been released in recent history in terms of justifying presidential actions of military force. It's the only one they've kept quiet.
No, the OLC writes many memos that are classified. There's a reason that you have people
but not of this nature. Not of this nature. Every president has put out why the office says that it's authorized. I'm just asking for that now at a minimum and to just make the case. I'm not saying he's wrong. I don't even believe, and this is the unpopular part that'll get all Norm's fans angry at me, I don't think it was wrong for the president to try. I think if you're going to kill anybody, killing drug dealers, I don't get why the left wants to defend these guys any more than they wanted to defend the guy down in El Salvador who got thrown out of the country for being a drug gangbanger. But that's politics. I'm saying Congress is right to say this is really about us. You got to come talk to us. We'll see how the president plays that. It's hard to make the case when the Speaker of the House isn't making it, though. We'll see what happens with that. I got to jump. Jesse Banal, I appreciate your arguments. Norm Eisen, although I am terribly jealous of your mustache and generous beard, I am still grateful that you are here. Best to both of you guys. Thank you for this. 4 minutes and 35 seconds. This really is not an exercise for me. Okay? It really isn't. This has to stop. And I'm not putting it all on Trump. Every president tries to do this. Okay, he's doing it more. He's doing it with less basis. Maybe, but this is what you get when you make something okay. It's time for it to stop. I'm not blaming him for trying. It's got to be about Congress insisting that the case be made. Okay? The War Powers Act, Article 1, Article 2 under the Constitution, this DOJ memo, what you know about from intelligence, whatever you think the premise is, you have to make a show before you go. Do lawmakers agree with me? I don't know. We're going to talk to one from both parties coming up. However, I do know something I think they do agree on. Can't wait.
I watched that first strike log. As you can imagine, at the Department of War, we got a lot of things to do. So I didn't stick around for the hour and 2 hours, whatever, where all the sensitive site exploitation digitally occurs. So I moved on to my next meeting. A couple of hours later, I learned that that commander had made which he had the complete authority to do. And by the way, Admiral Bradley made the correct decision to ultimately sink the boat and eliminate the threat.
Yeah, keep reading, Secretary. Because I got to tell you, this is not well handled. And here's how we know. The way this is done is by saying there is no issue. What was done was what was authorized to do. And we're about to do more. There is no reason to name Bradley and to go in how he thinks. It reeks of throwing the guy under the bus. But I'm only giving this its due because it's dominating social media and the state of play because people are trying to get Hegseth as a scalp, all right? I don't think it's the main question. It matters, but the main question is what the hell is the American military doing outside Venezuela? Isn't this Congress's job? Isn't it at a minimum for Congress to vet whether or not the president has the authority to do this, seeing how it would be ceding its authority to him to allow it? Okay? Let me bring in two members of Congress to discuss the state of play and what should be going on with this, but also something else very, very important. Democratic member of Congress Adam Smith, Republican member of Congress Anna Paulina Luna. And I say your name slow to give you more due, APL, because I believe you will both agree, because I know Adam cares about this issue also. Nothing burns the heinies of the American people like knowing that people in Congress get to trade stocks even when the companies come before them in committees. And we're all looking at Quiver, Quantitative, and the other sites, and it's been a big deal for us here at News Nation. And today you did something about it, Anna Paulina Luna. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so we were actually being told that we as members could not engage in the committee hearing on banning insider trading, that the amendment process for if there was a bill brought to the floor would be closed, so we couldn't partake in that. Not to mention that there is a massively bipartisan bill, the bill that I actually filed the discharge petition on, that has over 100 members of Congress, both Democrat and Republican, signed on to, and they actually wanted to gut that, water it down, and send something to the floor that would frankly still allow it to happen. So we filed the discharge petition. As you know, Chris, I've actually been pretty successful of that. My Democrat colleague here knows about that. The last one we did was on proxy voting for new parents. But ultimately, we believe, I believe that, you know, when you have members of Congress that are getting 600% returns, members of Congress that have served over 20, 30 years getting 17,000% returns, it's statistically not possible, and you can never truly represent the interests of the American people when you're betting against the markets and worried about your own stock portfolio. So we're trying to ban it.
Brother Smith, do you agree, and what do you think about resistance to this idea?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we should ban stock trading by members of Congress and limit their ability to do that. I think the problem is overstated in terms of the number of members who are doing it and the amount of success that they have had. And I worry about the reputation of the institution of Congress. The overwhelming majority of members, we get paid our salary, we go to work, I think we make a difference for the American people. I don't want to taint the entire institution, but that's part of the reason why it's so important to pass this bill. Is to eliminate that possibility of undue influence in influencing stock prices. So I think it's a good idea. I hope it passes.
It takes only one or two stinky fish to make the whole garbage bin reek. That's why it is an important thing. So I'm glad that you guys did it. I'm glad that there's bipartisan buy-in. It shows that people are listening to what Americans are so outraged about. Okay, so now something that's more controversial. And feel free to correct my assertions. I'm not as interested in the first strike, second strike, because I'm more interested in the overall architecture of why the American military is set up outside of Venezuela. APL, do you believe that it is Congress's job to have the administration come to them and make the case before having 10% of our military off the shore of Venezuela?
Well, the fact is that 10% of our military has been in a number of places over the last several decades. Obviously, Congress is the only authority to approve war. However, I think in this instance, specifically on some of the security briefings, as well as what the president deems as an immediate threat to the American people, which is protected under his Article 1 authorities, I think that he's still acting within his right. I know that we'll probably have some disagreement here, but what I will tell you and what I will continue to say is a lot of the intelligence that they're getting specifically from these narco traffickers, not to mention a lot of people fail to realize, and I'm sure probably, Chris, you might not even know this, but to my knowledge, when Marco Rubio was in Senate, he actually had a hit put out on him by Nicolas Maduro. I don't think many people know that. And so, in my opinion, the government of Venezuela has been actively engaging in what I would say is assassination attempts against sitting U.S. officials, and I don't think it's going to end well for them.
Adam Smith, what's your concern?
Well, first of all, that last point, I mean, that's a pretty strong charge to make. We need clear evidence of that if we're going to be acting on it militarily, not just an assertion. So I'd be really interested in seeing the evidence on that. But look, I think it's a real problem the president doesn't have authority. You mentioned some of these other wars. Those other wars at least had some authority. Congress passed an authorization for the use of force, rightly or wrongly, in 2001 and 2002. There is no authorization for this. And the president does not actually have Article 1 authority. He has Article 2 authority. Article 1 authority is supposed to be ours. It's supposed to be Congress. So yes, I think the president has not gotten the proper authority, and this does not meet the Article 2 test of an imminent threat of people getting ready to attack the United States of America or United States interests. And that's what's interesting about this boat strike. You know, once you have two people clinging to the side of a boat, it's very clear that they are no longer a threat. But even before that, a boat going through the water with cocaine in it, what is the exact military threat to the U.S. that justifies lethal force in that context? So I think it should go through Congress, and I don't think the president has the authority to be doing this right now.
Look, I have to be honest, Anna, if I'm arguing the case, I would like your side of it, because who wants to defend drug dealers? You know, Venezuela, though, to have this much force and the president suggesting he's going to have a land incursion soon, that sounds a lot like war to me. Does it not to you?
I think if the president is intent on declaring war, I think that he'll come to Congress first. But again, I don't support any narco traffickers, and I would do a heck of a lot worse if I was sitting president to people trying to bring drugs into this country that are intentionally killing Americans. And I'm pretty sure everyone here agrees that we don't want to defend narco traffickers. But remember, Barack Obama did the same thing with drone strikes, and it wasn't an issue. So I feel like no matter what this administration does, there's always going to be critique from many sides. But again, I mean, I support the president, what he's doing with this. This is not just, you know, me sitting here because I'm a Republican. I was in the military. I know the people that are putting together the packages for those strikes. I know them personally from my time in service. And so I will say that there are briefings available to members of Congress specifically that can outline this stuff. But again, before there would be any declaration of war, which you know, Chris, I'm definitely an anti-interventionist in many perspectives. So I obviously don't want to go to war with any country currently right now. I think that it's ultimately up to Congress to decide.
Two things about that. Number one, what is the mission? Is the mission to stop drugs coming into the U.S., or is the mission to overthrow the Maduro regime? And you alluded to this earlier, but what are we doing pardoning a convicted drug dealer from Honduras while we're saying, oh my gosh, we have to go after Maduro because he's involved in drug trading? They've actually said, oh, Maduro is an indicted, you know, he has been indicted for smuggling drugs in U.S. court. Well, the guy in Honduras was convicted in U.S. courts for that. So that's problem number one. Problem number two, on the drug dealer point, no one wants to defend a drug dealer. I'm going to defend a drug dealer. But are we in favor of the death penalty for drug dealers? And are we also in favor of the death penalty without any due process whatsoever? Okay? I mean, is that the country we want to live in? If this is a problem, there's a lot of problems. There's a lot of crime in America. Do we want to adopt a set of rules that says the president can execute whoever he wants, and he does not have to provide anybody any evidence, any probable cause, any due process? He can just kill whoever he wants, whenever he wants. That's not defending drug dealers, because remember, you have to actually prove that they are drug dealers, certainly before you kill them, but even before you try them. So are we going to be a country that says, no, we don't care about the law. Whoever's in charge, you kill whoever you want to kill, and go ahead and defend it. I mean, that's not defending drug dealers. That's defending constitutional rights.
I just think it's the job of Congress to have this debate on this issue, and I'm hoping that the Speaker of the House starts seeing it that way. I saw you nodding your head, Anna Paulina Luna. If it were up to you unilaterally, I would probably be in jail for the rest of my life in terms of how you want to see certain behaviors punished.
Look, I have a pretty low tolerance for people that traffic, and an even lower tolerance for people that are engaged in narco trafficking because of what they're doing to their community, their country, and other people. So if it were up to me, I'd probably have some of the perspectives that they hold in you know, parts of the Middle East where you'd basically go to jail or be executed for trafficking. Ultimately, though, you know, there are FISA courts that can pick up information if we find out that these people are in talks with Americans. Potentially, we don't know specifically what they're authorizing. But if it's being tied to that, I highly doubt, and I will confirm, but I highly doubt that these are being made just willy-nilly. But again, you know,
listen, I don't think it's willy-nilly.
Exhausting.
But
yeah,
I'm not saying it's random.
Intelligence to us.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying. It's just they should provide it. They should make the case. It should be transparent. That's all.
And they have.
All right, I got to jump. I know they should. I believe they should.
So we'll see.
All right, Anna Paulina Luna. If anybody can make it happen, you will. I appreciate you. Thank you for doing the work. work of the American people. Thank you for being together. Adam Smith, thank you for showing my audience that right and left can come together. You don't have to agree, but you don't have to be disagreeable. Thank you both. Take care of yourselves. 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Coming up, you remember the big, beautiful bill, and then they changed the name? I got to tell you, I like what I heard about what's happening today. I like the Trump accounts. I do. Do I want to know what Michael Dell or any other super rich people may be getting for being this generous, or am I just being cynical? I don't know, but Michael Dell given $6 billion to start accounts for 25 million kids that they get to cash in when they're 18. I got to tell you, I like it. I like how I like the feel of it. What am I missing? I want to talk to somebody who understands the idea a lot better. And he's also going to help me understand what's going on with crypto. I mean, it's tanking out of nowhere. What does that mean for the rest of us? Should we be aware of this if you're thinking of getting in? Next.
The Dells are announcing today that they are giving 25 million American children $250 each to save and to invest in their personal Trump account. Now that's the equivalent of $6.25 billion.
I like it. What am I missing? Trump's friends, billionaire Michael Dell, his wife Susan, announced that they're going to be giving more than $6 billion seed money that will be invested. We don't know how yet. I mean, look, maybe that's part of it, but you can't point the finger at Dell about that part because he's given the money, even if they were going to let him invest it. You know, I don't know how this is a bad thing. Put it that way. What could we be missing? 25 million kids born between 2025 and 2028. There's some provisions about how much money, you know, their families make and where their zip code is and what the average or median income is there to kind of make sure it's going to the right kinds of kids. OK, what does that mean? All right, let's discuss. What are the right kinds of kids? Is this the right kind of thing? And I have a big question about what's been happening, very scary, with crypto. Someone who understands these issues very well, Anthony Pompliano, founder and CEO of Professional Capital Management, host of the Pomp podcast. Very successful. Good to see you, handsome. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
All right, so what could we be suspicious about in this? I mean, to me, it just sounds like a good idea. Super rich guy wants to do something, doing it through the government so that it can be, I guess what, managed the right way? What do you think of this idea?
I think, first of all, you got to understand that the Invest America Act in general was, I think, a bipartisan, well-supported, very good idea. So the government putting $1,000 into these accounts, I think people understand that if you give people a stake in the capitalistic system, they're much more likely to be a fan of that. They're benefiting. They're in a better spot financially. And so I don't think there was a lot of controversy, frankly, from the original kind of mandate. Now, what it did do is it left a bunch of people who were kind of right outside of the threshold saying, well, what about me, right? What about my kid who just misses that threshold? And I think that the government at some point has got to draw a line, right? They got to make hard decisions. How much are we going to put in? Who we're going to give it to? And so what we have here is we have a private citizen who's saying, hey, I'm going to go and I'm going to help a friend. Now, a lot of people, I think, are asking about the president, but actually Brad Gerstner, the guy who's really the impetus or the source of this idea, he's been the one who's been really pushing this. He's the one who helped get the legislation done. And he's not only gone to Michael Dell, he's gone to a lot of companies as well. And so, you know, whether it's Jensen Huang at NVIDIA and others. And what I think is most interesting is this may be some of the most efficient philanthropy that we've actually seen in recent memory. You're taking $6.25 billion and you're giving it directly to your intended target. There's not NGOs in the way. There's not a lot of kind of the bureaucracy and red tape. Now, it'll take some time to see how effective is this program, but I think that there's going to be a pretty big portion of people who are inspired that a private citizen is taking this on and saying, I'm going to go help 25 million children. I'm going to do it in a way where it's direct support rather than going through kind of the nonprofit apparatus that a lot of people are questioning now.
Yeah, I mean, you know, look, we'll have to see who gets the management and how, what kind of fee structure and what do they get for giving. You know, is it more than the traditional tax-related giving? We'll have to see how that part plays out. But as an idea, I got to tell you, I like it. Now, what I don't like, and I need you to help me understand, is this drop in crypto. So as an ignorant person, my concern about crypto is there's no regressive cash flow analysis of underlying worth of this instrument, and everybody's excited about it because they think it gets rich quick, and then all of a sudden it just dumped because of Japan or whatever it was, like $1 gazillion worth of value. Is this what crypto really is? Not predictable, not dependable, or are we missing it?
Well, I think there's a couple of things, right? If you go and you talk to a financial advisor, they'll usually tell you the safest thing is cash or U.S. Treasuries. But if you look at something like TLT, which measures the 20-year Treasury rate, it's down over 40% over the last 5 years. It's down about 2% over the last year or so. So U.S. Treasuries, the thing that's seen as the safest thing in a portfolio, is pretty much engineered to just lose money. And so I think that, what's risky and what's not comes into question. Now, the other thing about Bitcoin is over the last 3 years, the compound annual growth rate is 72%. And so everyone who's kind of worried about the last couple of weeks, they are missing just even the last 3 years of performance has been very attractive. But I think the more important component is people who are buying Bitcoin are looking for volatility. If they go in their portfolio, they want some things that are safe and don't move a lot and are very stable. They may look to U.S. dollars for that. They want some things that drive some sort of return, maybe 10 to 12%. They'll look to U.S. equities for that. But they also want something that's really, really volatile, right? And so that's where Bitcoin comes in. Now, what's interesting about Bitcoin is over the last decade, Bitcoin has averaged a global financial crisis about every 18 months for a decade. That sounds really scary, right? Is the price has dropped 50% or more almost every 18 months for a decade. That sounds like you would want to avoid that asset. But if I told you that that asset has actually gone up over 200x during that decade, all of a sudden you're very interested in it. And so the thing that people are realizing in this younger generation is they need volatility. They're seeking out the volatility. They want to understand what are the things that could go up a lot because they feel like the traditional investment portfolio is not helping them get ahead. And so something like Bitcoin ends up becoming really interesting because of that volatility.
No risk, no reward. Pomp, I appreciate you. Thank you for making it understandable to the rest of us who are not as smart and as good looking as you, even if we are Italian. Thank you very much,
Trying
Anthony.
to be like you when I grow up. All right.
You got to aim a lot higher, brother. Aim a lot higher. 4 minutes and 15 seconds. Up next. So there was something that happened that nobody is really talking about, and I think it really matters a lot, okay? They begged this guy within the administration to take over drug approvals at the FDA. And he said, fine, fine. In less than a month, he's decided to quit. Why? And is this a window of insight into what we covered in our Killing Cancer special? That something's going on at the FDA that isn't necessarily getting the job done for you. Somebody who worked at the FDA will help us understand this next. Why is it that the clinicians or the FDA or whatever the standard is not impressed by this?
I think we stuck in the old assumptions. We stuck in the check the box, and we stuck in show me chemotherapy. They don't recognize that this is a ubiquitous treatment of your immune system. You shouldn't ask what cancer is that. That's what we're trying to get the FDA to understand.
All right. That was me and Dr. Pat, right? Dr. Pat Soon-Shiong, part of the NewsNation documentary Killing Cancer that you can watch right now on NewsNation's YouTube channel. It has absolutely gone viral, and for the right reasons, okay? Which are what? Why can't we be more aggressive about people and their right to try? Why can't insurance companies be made to pay for things? Why is the standard is what it is? Now, a lot of this comes down to the FDA, right? So, at the FDA, there's drama. Why? So there's a guy named Dr. Richard Pazdur, very respected within the FDA, within the clinical community. They really pushed him to take over drug approvals. He says, fine, fine. He does it, and he resigns in less than a month. Why? And what does it tell us about what's happening or not happening at this very important agency within our government? So I asked Peter Pitts to come back, former Associate Commissioner of the FDA, to help us understand. Pete, thank you for turning right around and coming back again. One, what matters to you about Pazdur and the resignation?
Well, the first thing to understand is that Rick Pazdur, more than any other human being on the planet, has driven advances in cancer care in this country over the last 20-odd years. He's a hero. He is a genius. He knows how to work the regulatory system, not just to get good drugs on the market, but to keep patients first, to make sure he understands what patients need. So that's a rare double play when it comes to drug regulation. He was asked to take the job as director of the entire drug center, Center for Drug Evaluation and Research, CEDAR. He initially didn't want to do it. He was perfectly happy in his oncology perch. He's the best in the world. We were lucky to have him. The commissioner, Marty McCary, basically went to his house on bended knee and begged him to come, promised him complete independence, and that turned out to be a complete load of you-know-what.
So why? And this isn't him just going back to what he did. He's leaving, so something went wrong. Why was it a load of you-know-what?
Well, from what I've heard from the inside is that the commissioner, Marty McCary, wanted to place two political appointees in key slots underneath Rick Pazder without asking Rick Pazder what he thought. Rick was promised autonomy. That turned out to be not to be true, and he's walking. And I mean, I can't blame him, but it sure is a loss for American healthcare, and especially for patients with cancer.
So, assuming that Pazder is not an unreasonable guy by reputation and in your experience, what would be wrong with putting political appointees below him?
Nothing's wrong with having the commissioner and Rick Pazder discuss placing people in slots. That's the way it's supposed to happen. But to basically tell the director of the center, a highly respected individual who had just recently been promised autonomy, here are the guys I'm going to put in place, and they're my political guys, is a non-starter. Rick Pazder is a career public health regulator. He is not a political guy. And having his boss, who's a political appointee, tell him that political guys are going to be put underneath him by the commissioner without any say-so from him is not the way to run a drug regulatory agency, and sends a very bad signal that politics, rather than public health and facts and figures, are going to rule the day. And that is a very bad sign, not just for Dr. Pazder and for cancer, but for the FDA as a whole, because that, I think, is going to speak to more very solid people leaving because they're not being allowed to do their job, which is to follow the science and do the right thing.
Pete, I appreciate it. Thank you very much for giving us this perspective. I've had several different people reach out to me and say, pay attention to this, pay attention to this. It's nowhere in the news cycle, but very often there are people, there are cogs in the machine that keep things going in the right direction. We'll see what kind of change this brings. Peter Pitts, thank you very much. Appreciate you.
My pleasure. Wish I had better news, but let's keep an eye on it.
Yeah, that's why I got you, my friend. All right, we'll be right back. I can see on social media saying, why would you defend drug dealers? It's not what it's about. Nobody wants to defend drug dealers, and I think you get a lot of slack on going after them, to be honest. But a president can't just do whatever he wants to do, even if Congress seems to allow that. And I think that's been true way before Trump. Is this a bolder step? Is this more of an incursion on what's supposed to be Congress's power? Yes. But this is what happens when things erode, right? All of a sudden you get a landslide. Congress has to have the president make the case. Will they? We'll see. Leland Vittert, right now.
Welcome to the program, friends. Start tonight with breaking news. Election night in Tennessee, a special election there, closely watched as a bellwether for the upcoming midterms, and you can see both camps in Nashville, Tennessee. The Republican and the Democrat, a progressive, are eagerly awaiting the results. Trump-backed Republican Matt Van Epps, a former state commissioner, running against Democratic State Representative Afton Bain, who earned the nickname the AOC of the South. Decision Desk HQ reviewing the returns right now. As you know, Decision Desk HQ has been the first to call a number of races over the past couple of years, including the presidential. Right now, 62% of the vote in. This is very, very close. Trump won this district by 22 points. It is now within 1 point. Stunning. Director of Data Science Scott Tranter with us in a moment. Now to our other developing story tonight. If Democrats keep attacking President Trump and Pete Hegseth over drug boat strikes, there is a real danger. And the danger is a Ferguson effect in the U.S. military. We can all agree, Republican, Democrat, it's not a left-right issue, it's a right-wrong issue. The last thing we need are admirals and generals who are afraid to defend American interests because they fear getting hauled before Congress or being prosecuted. In the face of the scrutiny, the president and his Secretary of War are doubling down.
striking narco boats and putting narco terrorists at the bottom of the ocean.
Tonight, our panel, including Scott Jennings, on how the process attacks on Donald Trump are only benefiting America's enemies. Scott's getting ready, don't worry. Plus, Eric Erickson tells me if it's too late for Trump to change the narrative on affordability. Katie Miller on the administration's plan to remove legal immigrants from the country. But first, as always, our Why It Matters segment tonight. There is a very simple explanation for what Democrats are doing. They want to drive a wedge between the commander-in-chief and the U.S. military. And we are getting dangerously close to that Ferguson effect in the U.S. military. It is not too much to think that admirals and generals might start thinking twice about carrying out orders because they are afraid of getting hauled before Congress and then prosecuted. We do not need a Tom Clancy novel. We have seen this play out before in my home state of Missouri. The rioting and backlash after a police officer shot and killed Michael Brown in 2014 led to the Ferguson effect. It explained exploding crime rates as the Black Lives Matter movement gained steam. Cops stopped enforcing the law out of fear they would be prosecuted. The administration has a new talking point to prevent a Ferguson effect within the ranks. They're simply insisting everything is being done by the books.
We have built a pretty good, solid legal framework.
The president is acting under his authority as commander-in-chief.
I think he's acting within his authority.
He has the authority to kill them. Our operations in the Southcom region are lawful.
You may be able to say that, but the military has to think that. The military's chain of command is sacrosanct, especially in a country where civilian control of the military goes back to George Washington. But that's not stopping Democrats from all but encouraging troops to ignore orders. Even former President Barack Obama is joining the chorus of hall monitors trying to tell troops what to do.
Our democracy is more unstable than any time in my lifetime. And I think there's been resistance, particularly in the military, to that. You don't have your military involved in partisan politics.
Interesting, because it's Democrats who are the one who put out the video turning members of the military into political actors. And just this issue about drone strikes is pretty rich coming from Obama. I'm old enough to remember when he lobbed drones and bombs all over the Middle East to kill terrorists. I was there in Libya while he did it without Congress's authorization. His explanation back then sounds a lot like Pete Hegseth's now.
This is a targeted, focused effort at people who are on a list of active terrorists.
Every one of those drug boats is tied to a designated terrorist organization. We know who's on it, what they're doing, what they're carrying. All these white bales are not Christmas gifts from Santa.
There was no calls for mutiny under Obama. But there's a larger point to this. If Democrats' antics cross from the political theater of Washington, which is basically where it's at, to the theater of battle, it's going to have real-world consequences, paid in service members' lives. And to be fair, Hegseth telegraphed this type of action when he addressed military leaders at Quantico back in September.
No more politically correct and overbearing rules of engagement. Just common sense, maximum lethality, and authority for warfighters.
Whether or not the law was violated with this second strike on a drug boat, very, very difficult to understand at this point. The admiral who carried out the strikes is expected to brief lawmakers this Thursday. The Wall Street Journal suggests Admiral Frank Bradley will bring receipts from the Journal. If Mr. Hegseth is right, then the factual record will support him. You can bet senior military officers bought insurance on their own careers by recording the advice they gave and the directions they received, although actually recording the Secretary of Defense seems perhaps implausible. We'll see. But the damage done by what Republicans call the seditious six might be irreversible. You do not need a Tom Clancy novel to envision a scenario where an admiral or general is torn between carrying out a legal but controversial order or fearing being brought before a Senate oversight panel. Scott Jennings joins us in a moment to talk about the dangers of politicizing the military. Start with NewsNation's Kelly Meyer at the White House. Good evening, Kelly.
Yeah, hey there, Leland. So my sources at the Pentagon say the secretary has been laying the groundwork for commanders to exercise their own initiative here, as long as it is aligned with the White House goal of destroying alleged drug boats and narco-terrorists they say are on board. Secretary Hegseth says the admiral who carried out the strike did the right thing before admitting he wasn't even in the room when the second strike happened. Listen to this.
I did not personally see survivors, but I stand, because the thing was on fire. It was exploded and fire and smoke. You can't see anything. You got digital. This is called the fog of war. This is what you in the press don't understand.
Now, the White House gave a number of different explanations since the report came out on Friday. The Pentagon called the narrative false. Then the White House confirmed the strikes, and now the administration is defending the strikes. But over on Capitol Hill, there is still debate about whether or not narco-terrorists should even be considered combatants in the first place. Leland.
Kelly Meyer, excellent questions. Thank you very much. Decision Desk HQ now projecting Republican Matt Van Epps is the winner in the Tennessee 7 special election. So this dashes Democrats' hopes of a huge upset. But the margin of the victory is what is going to be a key factor in how both sides spin this. It was a Trump plus 22 district, and this race was incredibly tight, showing just the move towards Democrats here over the past couple of months. Right now, that's about an 8-point margin. Matt Van Epps keeps the seat of Mark Green in Tennessee, Republican. Bringing our political panel, Scott Jennings, author of A Revolution of Common Sense, How Donald Trump Stormed Washington and Fought for Western Civilization, former Biden White House Press Office Chief of Staff Yemisi Egbawale. Normally it's ladies first, but tonight we start with you, Scott, because of the book. Congratulations. I think this sort of common sense conversation might play in well here. You come from the comms world of politics. Is this talking point from the White House of this was the admiral's call and we're standing behind the admiral distancing themselves, or giving the chain of command authority and then backing them up?
I watched the whole exchange today at the cabinet meeting, and I thought they were backing up the chain of command. I mean, look, the president wants the boats sunk. He promised the American people a muscular response to the narco-terrorists in our hemisphere. Hegseth gave the orders, and we allow the military operators to operate. And that's what's going on. I think they ought to lean into this, frankly. I don't think it's wrong for Congress to ask questions about it.
Has Donald Trump ever leaned out of something?
Well, no, but that needs to apply to everybody else. And when they go up to Congress, they need to continue to lean into it, because I believe they have a political mandate from the American people to take these narco-terrorists seriously. I don't think most Americans think we've done much of anything to stop all these drugs that flood into the country, and I think that they're going to find a lot of political support for it. So, look, I didn't view them as backing away or throwing anyone under the bus. I viewed them as saying, we've got the best U.S. military operators in the theater. They're making decisions, and they're doing what the president wants, which is to sink these terrorists and stop them from flooding the United States with drugs.
You're very close to George W. Bush and his famous line, what we need to do is stop the terrorists, I think, before he hit a golf ball in Kennebunkport. Yeah, there we go. This is Democrats calling essentially for Hegseth's head. Take a listen.
The only debate is just whether or not he's a murderer or a war criminal.
There is no lawyer that I'm aware of who indicates that that second strike is not a war crime.
And this is the most unqualified Secretary of Defense we've ever had in the history of our country by far.
To ignore that law in the use of military objectives undermines our nation's purpose.
Pete Hegseth has to go. He has to resign. Donald Trump has to fire him.
Does the hyperbole work in Republicans' favor?
No. In Republicans' favor, yes. And it doesn't work on the American people. These same Democrats didn't vote for Hegseth. They've called on him to resign repeatedly. He's doing what the president asked him to do, which is to sink these boats. And he's empowered the military to take action to sink the boats. And so I'm not sure why they would fire him. Again, I think Congress has every right to ask questions, but these Democrats are not doing this for legitimate oversight purposes. This is overtly political. They've hated Hegseth from the beginning. This is a little bit of a dog bites man situation.
You know, Scott, we knew you wouldn't feel comfortable unless you had somebody, not to argue with or yell at, but at least to discuss with, a sparring partner. Yemisi, to you. Are Democrats overplaying their hand when they keep getting in front of call them scandals, stories, whatever it is. And even before we know the facts, lest something is a headline in the Washington Post, it's already time to resign.
Look, legislatively, they are overplaying their hand, but not with constituents, because we know when they go to these town halls, you've got mom and pop in those town halls, in those auditoriums, screaming at them to do something. But legislatively, as somebody who worked in the Senate during Trump's first administration, and there were many, many calls for impeachment, we know that that's not going to go anywhere. Speaker Hakeem Jeffries, and I cannot believe I'm going to give him his flowers here.
You just called him Speaker?
Minority Speaker.
They're already measuring the grapes, Leland. That's what
Sorry,
happened.
I'm already
lost in Tennessee.
I'm already thinking about 2026. That margin, it was a little, it was wide enough for me there. But he said that he's not going to bring, he's not going to push it because he knows that Johnson's not going to bring articles of impeachment to the floor. I think it's about time that they focus more on 2026 on the midterms. I don't really think that this is something that goes where it plays well when they go back to those districts, but it doesn't actually move anything in Washington.
But they do it because it's what the Democratic Party base wants. They want the Democrats to throw sand in the gears of government. They want them to shut down the government. They want the military to say, not follow orders, legitimate orders from the commander-in-chief. They want to create chaos and grind government to a halt because that's what their base demands. I agree with you. Yeah. Regular people, regular Americans would like everybody to work together and do legitimate things. But the radical end of the Democratic base in no way, shape, or form wants them to work with or allow Donald Trump to operate as a legitimate commander-in-chief.
Well, let's look at the special election of Tennessee that you were just discussing. I mean, one of the ways that Dems are usually able to catch up to the heels of anything, even a safe seat like Tennessee, is because they are great at driving out people to the polls. They're really great at energizing that base. And a lot of that energy comes from indignation. And that indignation is easy to come by when you turn it to somebody like the Secretary of War.
We'll put the results up. And I think this sort of moves us actually to a great point. This was Mark Green, chairman of Homeland Security's seat. Donald Trump won this seat in Tennessee by 22 points. The margin right now is 8 points. Scott, that's a 16-point spread.
Yeah.
You can't tell me Republicans shouldn't be worried about that.
Oh, look, I think I'm a political operative. I worry about everything. And I'm sure you do, too. Special elections have a different turnout matrix, A. B, it is true Democrats have more motivated and also more reliable voters in their party right now, so that affects turnout in odd year or off year or special elections. There are lessons to learn here, but there's still a few more Election Day votes to count. The margin may grow a little bit. The last poll showed Democrats within 2 points. I think if we learned anything in this special election, it's that the Democratic candidate here, who was objectively cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
Wait, I was going to call her a little wackadoodle.
That is the median Democrat candidate right now. She is basically center-cut Democrat is what you got out of Tennessee. You're going to see it all over the country.
As a Southern Democrat, I have to say, somebody traipsing around Nashville saying they don't like country music, that's not where we are. And also, I think Democrats are learning from past mistakes, and we're moving from a platform that she used of defund the police, and we're talking more about reforming.
She didn't come off of that. She
ducked and she dodged. She ducked and she dodged.
She wouldn't repudiate.
Well, it's different, though, and you're not seeing her, though, wrap herself in the flag. And frankly, you're not seeing a lot of the Democrats that are criticizing Trump and the military right now wrapping themselves in the flag either.
No, I'm shocked at Democrats' willingness to defend illegal immigrants, narco-terrorists. I mean, basically anybody that's not an American citizen, you're first in line in the Democratic Party right now. I do not understand it as a strategy.
I compared yesterday. I'll give you the last word. Scott got the first. I compared yesterday the kill everybody, narco-terrorism, laws of war scandal, if you want to call it that, to the Maryland man, Abrego Garcia thing. Democrats thought they had it. They thought they had the dog by the tail, and they were going to get Kristi Noem fired and impeached in April, and it blew up in their face. Tell me why this is different.
Well, I think Democrats are going to let go of this Pete Hegseth thing. I think any Democrat political operative is going to tell you we really want to focus on what's happening inside of this country. We have huge foreign policy fatigue. We grew up under 9/11, some of us, and there's a growing generation of folks that do not want you to focus at what's happening abroad, what's happening overseas, and they want you to focus at what's happening at home and hopefully helping them afford to buy a home.
Scott, I've been a big fan of yours for a long time. I'm going to give you one piece of advice, though, on a book tour, okay? You got to hold it up higher. We couldn't see the book last time.
And cover up the franchise?
Yeah, well, yeah. But we got to get it above the lower third there, the little Chiron bar. All right, the book is A Revolution of Common Sense. Scott Jennings, already on the New York Times bestseller list. Congratulations.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you. Yemisi, good to see you as well.
Good to see you.
Friends, next, exactly what Yemisi was talking about. Trump calls the affordability crisis a hoax and a scam. We know prices are high, but maybe he has a point.
The word affordability is a con job by the Democrats.
It is absurd that Democrats talk about an affordability crisis that they created.
The word affordability is a Democrat scam.
Donald Trump said again today the affordability crisis is, as you heard, a con job. And to be fair, he's partly right. The con is Democrats are blaming him for everybody feeling broke. He's largely right. It is not his fault, but it is now his problem. He is the guy sitting behind the Resolute desk in the center at the cabinet meeting. He is the president. We've been saying for months that the affordability question could be Trump's Achilles heel. On our show back in August, Senator John Kennedy warned President Trump about the rising living costs. Team Trump still has not figured it out.
President Trump is not talking enough about the economy, and specifically inflation. People are tired of paying more to live worse. Republicans promised to get prices down, but I don't think the president's talking about it enough.
Eric Erickson has also been ringing the alarm bells about this for Republicans, host of the nationally syndicated Eric Erickson Show and the author of Show Notes, which I subscribe to every day. You should as well. The best, I think, conservative newsletter out there. Eric, good to see you. Thank you. Does Donald Trump have a messaging problem or an economic problem?
Both. He really does. Behold the healing power of and here. The economic problem is a lot of it is tariffs. You know, so I'm a coffee snob. I get this 5-pound bag of Guatemalan coffee. A few months ago, it was $105 with tax and shipping, and now it's $170. And now he's cut tariffs. The prices come back down, and yet on aluminum, we don't produce enough aluminum. Aluminum goes into a lot of stuff, including houses. Houses are expensive. Prices are going up. Tariffs have played a role. The problem here, though, Leland, is that the only major economic policy he's implemented has been tariffs. He hasn't changed a whole lot. We know that tariffs bring down inflation. The San Francisco Fed said so, but they do so by driving up unemployment and slowing down the economy, which is what he doesn't want. And they don't have a response for it other than people are going to get big tariff rebates and more money in their pocket from tariff rebates. But they just argued in the Supreme Court a few weeks ago that the tariffs aren't revenue generators. So how is this possible? They don't have a unifying message, and they've actually made things worse with tariffs.
Well, trying to convince Donald Trump that tariffs don't work, I think, is trying to convince the sun to rise in the West. Just not going to happen. But to that point, I want to come to your house and taste what a $170 cup of coffee tastes like.
It's a massive bag of coffee. It lasts us 2 months, and it's glorious.
Okay. I've never heard glorious used to describe coffee. But as you said, Trump is promising some type of dividend, give back, payback. Take a listen.
Next year is projected to be the largest tax refund season ever. And we're going to be giving back refunds out of the tariffs because we've taken in literally trillions of dollars. And we're going to be giving a nice dividend to the people.
So if there's a dividend that comes, you're saying that people won't care?
Look, I think they'll care when they get it, but it came out of their pocket to begin with. It didn't come from foreign governments. It's the importers of the United States who paid for it. And by the way, the Supreme Court may very well declare it unconstitutional, and the money will probably have to be refunded that way. So maybe he can spin it and say that's the dividend check when it comes back by order of the Supreme Court. But he's still got a problem there because tariffs are a problem, but also inflation is still higher than the Fed wants it. Wages are slipping behind inflation now, so every dollar you spend, you can buy less. He's got a larger economic problem, and part of the problem, to be fair and candid, Democrats won't like it, is they caused a big problem, and Donald Trump messaged when he got into the White House that he could fix it very quickly. It actually takes a while. to get it sorted, and voters' patience are starting to run out. We're seeing it in the special election in Tennessee tonight, where Republicans were always going to win it, but they probably should be winning by a bigger margin.
Yeah. Scott Jennings didn't seem too concerned. I understand why you would be. What's down under Trump? This is something that the White House and its allies are talking about as much as they can. December 31st, 2024, gas $3.04 a gallon. Today, December 2nd, 2025, $2.99 a gallon, and expected to drop more. Is that enough?
You know, that's actually going to help, and to a degree it can help offset tariffs. Because remember, I mean, the price of energy, particularly gas, goes into the transportation of the cow to the slaughterhouse, from the slaughterhouse to the grocery store, from the grocery store to your house with your car being filled up. So that does meaningfully make an improvement. In fact, there's an oil glut on the global market for the first time since 2020. I've been encouraging the president to drill as much as he can and expand drilling. It looks like they're doing that. That helps, but that's only one factor, because you still have housing. Grocery prices are still expensive. College tuition. There are other things that this White House could be doing, including pushing a bipartisan bill to make student loans dischargeable under bankruptcy again, which would actually have a free market effect on driving down the costs of loans and restricting access to a degree that would actually help students and reduce college tuition below inflation, where it's just exploded above inflation. They seem to be more focused on needling the left instead of coming up with some real policies right now.
Yeah, or maybe make colleges take the risk of their own student loans, and then they'd be a little bit more hesitant to give out $250,000 of debt for a poetry degree. But Americans not optimistic about Trump's economy. 74% say prices higher than a year ago. 41% think the economy is doing poorly. Prices are higher than a year ago, and that's been true over time, because prices always go up. It's very rare that prices go down. What goes up is wages, and therefore people feel like things is cheaper. 41% though thinking the economy is doing poorly. That means 59% think it's doing something other than poorly, which is probably a good thing. The question though is this: if Donald Trump and his administration was more understanding in their messaging of the pain Americans feel, how far would that go with your listeners to buy more time to get things turned around?
That's a great question, and I think it actually would help. Instead of being dismissive of the concerns like the Biden administration was, acknowledging that there's still a ways to go and you can still blame Joe Biden to get it off your own back, I think would help. Also, something we haven't seen, Leland, is the president out barnstorming the country on these issues. Now, granted, he's been tied up with a lot of foreign policy, as most second-term presidents are, but being out on the campaign trail, holding some rallies, and making sure people understand he does care about them and understands there's still a ways to go would actually help, I think, the Republicans. The midterms are coming. They need a strategy, and empathizing with the public probably would help.
Yeah. And evidently he is scheduled, at least we hear, to go out barnstorming, as you say, after the first of the year. Why wait until then? We don't know. Eric Erickson, thank you very much. We appreciate it. First wrote about this in War Notes. Your chance for an inside look at the show every day. It is free, warnotes.com to subscribe. I'll see you on social media, @LelandVittert. The president says he wants Somalis out of the country. Will a $1 billion fraud scheme get Americans to agree?
I don't want them in our country, I'll be honest with you. Okay? Somebody would say, oh, that's not politically correct. I don't care. I don't want them in our country. Their country's no good for a reason. Their country stinks. And we're going to go the wrong way if we keep taking in garbage into our country.
Some strong words from President Trump about Somali immigrants in Minnesota specifically. The words come as new information emerges by the hour, literally, on a $1 billion and counting welfare fraud scheme pulled off by members of Minnesota's very large Somali community. Today, there are new details that Governor Tim Walz ignored warnings about fraud, or maybe even looked the other way for political reasons. Town Hall reports Walz actually received campaign donations from a lawyer for one of the fraudulent charities at the center of the scheme. Now, ICE is reportedly being sent to the scene of these crimes with orders to specifically target the Somali community throughout Minneapolis. With us now, Katie Miller, host of the Katie Miller podcast, former Trump administration official. Good to see you. You know, better lucky than good in terms of timing for the administration on this?
Always.
The most entertaining outcome is the most likely, which is what we're seeing in this case, right? Which is billions of dollars of fraud in Minnesota, which is what President Trump warned against in 2020. If you go back to his tweets from the time saying that if President Biden were elected, you would see large-scale fraud take place because that's what their goal is. Their goal is to import large amounts of voters to take away the benefits that you and I at
Who's they?
Who is the Democrat Party.
Okay.
The Democrat Party. That is their goal, is to import as many voters as possible. They are no longer the party of the working men and women. That is the Republicans. That is President Trump. That's who he fights for. That is his core constituency. And meanwhile, you have these Somalis who are coming in, who are bilking the government out of billions of dollars, whether that be through Social Security benefits, whether that be through Medicaid, whether that be through SNAP benefits, which I know President Trump is looking at to cut at this very moment in time.
Okay. He even said he was going to be criticized for using the word garbage. Does that language help not with diehard MAGA, but with moms across America?
I think moms across America are looking at what their money is being spent for. I think it is a very hard economy, no matter who's president. And you look at the bills and what you're spending for in our kids. Thanks to President Biden, we've seen inflation go up and things cost more than they ever have. And when you have situations like that, I don't want my money going towards, you know, non-citizens here.
There's a difference between saying you don't want your money going there and calling someone garbage, right?
Sure, but
would you let your kids use that language?
I would say if you're leaving our country and our cities with garbage strewn on them, which is what you're seeing in these towns in Minnesota, that is indeed the definition of garbage.
It's an interesting pivot. I applaud it. Let me take you to this, because in addition to having your very successful podcast, former Trump administration official, you are also the wife of Stephen Miller, still at the White House. Here is Jennifer Welch on her I've Had It podcast. I'm sure you've heard this before.
If you think that my opinion that you and your husband are Nazi white nationalists is hateful, good. I will never stop calling out the injustice and the cruelty and the Nazi-style ideals that your husband has. You're sociopaths. You are literally, when I think of horrible people in this country, you and your husband are at the very top of the list.
When I think of horrible people in this country, I think of the Afghan refugee who shot in cold murder a National Guard soldier patrolling our streets of D.C. I think about the tens of thousands of illegal aliens who are committing crimes across our country, whether that be rape, DUI, murder, and President Trump's work to deport, and my husband's work to deport those illegal aliens and make our streets safer.
Does it make you angry at all?
No, she's an irrelevant person who's delusional, who believes that her words, should anything ever violent happen to my family or to conservatives, that she wouldn't be responsible. And that type of violent rhetoric is what led to the murder of our dear friend Charlie Kirk. It has no place in public discourse. Okay. And I think political discourse only gets worse and more violent because of rhetoric like this.
There is now a split. And we have often said on this program that Donald Trump's real political genius is getting his opposition to take unpopular positions. Here is the mayor and the Minneapolis police chief promising to protect Somalis. Take a listen.
The community should know that if you see something like that, that is legitimate, that you don't know if someone is law enforcement, you should call 911, and reminding our officers of their duty to intervene. So if there is anything that is, a violation of someone's human rights or civil rights, excessive force or anything like that, they absolutely have a duty to intervene.
And so to our Somali community, Daman Shabka, Somalied Kunul.
I don't speak Somali, but we'll try to get the translation for that. Who wins this fight?
The American people end up winning, because President Trump, as he's done with every single policy platform he said at last summer's RNC convention, he's completed every single one. President Trump does what he said he's going to do, which is why the Democrats are so upset, which is why they try to tear us down each and every single day. But if you go back and look at Minnesota, for example, the police chief there originally said we need to get the crime by these East Africans under control, only to apologize mere days later. That's not taking policing very seriously. It's politicizing what is going on in Minnesota, which is rampant crime.
All right. Katie Miller, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Always fun to have you. Look forward to the Pete Hegseth interview on the Katie Miller Show. Back to our breaking news. Democrats were hoping for a massive upset in Tennessee. It did not happen. Decision Desk HQ projects Republican Matt Van Epps is the winner in the Tennessee District 7 congressional special elections. He beat Afton Bain by roughly 8 points, which sounds like a sizable victory. But for Democrats across the country, maybe not so bad. With us now, the man behind the numbers, Scott Tranter, head of data science for our Partners Decision Desk HQ, fresh off another First Network call. Congratulations.
Thanks.
As always, I think you were at least 15 or 20 minutes before everybody else. All right. What is this now? A 6-point margin? Is that really sort of a victory for Democrats in a Trump plus 22 district?
Yeah, I mean, look, to the extent that you can have a victory by still losing, I think when the final margin comes out, it's going to be a little bit closer to 10. If you look at what Van Epps did across the district, he did what he needed to do. Afton Bain did what other Democratic candidates in special elections did this year, is they clawed away at some of that vote, something we expect in the midterms. But this race wasn't as close as the media had portrayed it to be.
All right. Afton Bain running as I Hate Nashville and an acolyte of AOC in what is at least a traditional and mostly rural and somewhat suburban district. What does it say that that is now the Democrat standard bearer candidate?
Well, it's not a message they can run on, right? I mean, that's a message they ran in a state that overwhelmingly just outside the district was Donald Trump. That message may work in a city like New York, but I don't think that's a message that's going to win them close seats in Iowa, Ohio, Texas, the other places. And I think, the data shows that tonight.
You say that this is as much of a victory as a loss can be. What is the silver lining for Democrats?
Silver lining for Democrats is this is another data point where they are outperforming the margins that they had in 2024. So it is progress for them. It is another data point where they have it. Now, a district R plus 20 like we saw, no one expected them to win, but they're going to go home saying, hey, we closed the gap by 10 or 15 points. If we do that in places like California, Texas, and Florida, maybe we can actually win a couple of these.
So the idea is, right, that if you swing from Donald Trump 2024 numbers in the midterms, D plus 12, blue plus 12, suddenly what? Do Democrats then control the House?
It certainly makes it close. It makes us a House projection call. It may take a week or two because that's how close it is.
All right. Scott Tranter, thank you very much. When we come back, was Marilyn Monroe actually murdered? Best-selling author James Patterson thinks yes. The suspects will shock you.